Hello, I'm Robert at Deadartstudios and welcome to Painting with Deadartstudios, and we're continuing tonight with my impasto acrylic painting, and I'm getting straight into it here, and I'm laying down some paint for the clouds. I decided I wanted thicker cloud up on the top in white to go on top of the sort of sunset orange cloud that's underneath. So I just used my modelling medium mixed with titanium white paint, and I'm dropping it on there with the palette knife, and I hope everyone's doing well and you're having a nice evening. I'm sat here after a long day just talking over my painting now, commentary on the video, and I'm just using a knitting needle here to put some texture in to the cloud, move it around a bit. It's almost ice cream like, isn't it? I suppose. And there is a sort of candy look to the whole painting, and this is my first time using this particular modelling medium. I think I might try another painting with adding some gloss to it, because this is very chalky and matte, which is cool, and I'm happy to try that, but I'd quite like to get some gloss in there as well for a different look. And that might work quite well with water. I might try like a reflection in the water piece, something like that. So I've been working for several sessions on this now, and some of those are available to watch at my channel. Some I did just by myself to make progress, because it's always a little bit easier to just paint without the distraction of filming. And down at the bottom there at the front, I've got the foreground with the idea of having some sort of cliff-like structures, and then the beach, then the water, sort of sea as it comes up on the beach in that sort of greeny blue colour, then some sort of crashing waves in the background and up onto the sunset. And it's been a busy week for me. I've been travelling. I've been to Germany with the family, seeing a new member of the family, a little baby, and it's great, but it's also very intense having lots of youngsters all in the same place, and it snowed and we had crazy weather, and it's nice to be back as well. I'm settling back into the rhythm as we're heading towards Christmas now. So there's lots of planning to do for that. I'm trying not to take Christmas too seriously this year. I think you can get lost in the preparation. I'm just going to try and simplify, keep everything nice and easy breezy, and that way hopefully we can relax a little bit. And hopefully I'll get some painting done too. So I hope you guys are getting on with your arts and crafts, whatever it might be, and that you're managing to find some time from the busy schedules that we all have to create something. So it's a while since I did this painting, so I'm trying to remember what I was doing in the background while my painting's here for us to look at. I'm probably washing my palette knife and brushes off and getting ready for the next colour. So I go over and do that by my sink and just clean everything off. And if I'd had foresight to remember that, I might have edited this down a little bit, but I didn't. So I'm just going to ramble on and talk through. And as I look at the piece now, and I still have the same sort of things that I want to solve. The yellowness of that beach down at the front is obviously way too yellow for my liking, not sort of textured or anything like that. And in a moment here I'm mixing up some greens to I attempt to do some grass and seaweed like effect on the front of the beach there, and it doesn't go so well. And I've changed that a bit since with a knife by cutting away through it, which you can see on my Instagram shorts. and also is it Instagram Shorts? There's so many different mediums these days. It's YouTube Shorts, Instagram Reels, and TikToks. So all of those I have on the Deadartstudios, so you can find them if you're interested. And yeah, I'm putting the green paint on here now. I'm trying to create a sort of grassy knoll effect. When you're in beaches and you get the sort of dune light with that nice dune grass, but it kind of fails. So I think really it's just going to be colour, and as I paint over all the this is like the base layer of the painting really, and I am going to paint in a more traditional and detailed fashion on top to try and create some tone and put a bit more gloss into it with paint that's not mixed with the modelling medium. So a bit of shading, some highlights, a bit of extra colour, to create some more depth to the picture. And I think it's going to be a matter of trying to bring out the idea of grass and dunes and cliffs at the front a bit more with just the brush and painting. But here I'm trying, and I'm just laying it down, looking. I'm trying to create some texture, and there's probably a way to do this. I think I was looking for a really fine, like a needle or something, to do this, and I didn't find one, so I decided just to try it with the fatter knitting needle. I think that's a 4mm for anyone who's a knitter. And yeah, I'm trying there with the comb as well. I have this comb, and I'm trying to create a grass texture, and then it's just not looking right, is it? I mean, I think we can all agree with that. So, but for me, this painting is about experimentation and finding new techniques that work and honing a style, something that represents me. And I've got to go on that journey really to find that, and that's going to involve making lots of mistakes. And I don't even think it's really mistakes, it's just looking for ways to do things and create effects. And in your mind, the logic of I'll make some lines in some painting and it'll look like grass, and sometimes it does and sometimes it doesn't. And this is not a realistic painting anyway, but you have to sort of ask yourself, what is the level of realism you want from what are the lines and the textures representing? How close to photographic reality is it? And I think you are comparing to a photograph, aren't you, really? Because 3D reality, as we sort of see it with our eyes, it is quite different, I think. So we're sort of thinking more about 2D photorealism rather than just pure realism. So I'm working away on it, putting the texture in, just scratching away with a knitting needle. And I have to start my knitting again soon. I've had some time off while I've been away. I didn't take the knitting with me. I did take my sketchbook and did a sketch out there, which I quite enjoyed actually, but it was pretty hectic, so didn't get lots done. But I did get a nice sort of meadow sketch that I did. Quite enjoyed doing that. So yes, I have to start my knitting up again. I'm trying to knit a jumper or a sweater for the winter, and I've already restarted it because I dropped a stitch, and then had to go back and try and correct it, but for reasons that only knitters would be interested in, I ended up restarting rather than correcting my mistakes, which should always be your first port of call, but I wasn't successful on that occasion. So I'm trying to just smear the paint at this point with my fingers to get a sort of look that I want, and as I said, it didn't really work. And when this all dried in the morning, I got my Stanley knife out and cut into it, and it actually worked quite nicely to reveal some of the bubbly texture of the dried modelling medium and paint. Created a sort of quite nice cliff and rock effect actually underneath. So, sometimes I suppose I did it in anger really, but it actually worked quite well for that. And I think as it stands, I've probably finished with the impasto side of it, the three-dimensional aspect of the painting, and it will now just be a matter of highlights and shadows, colour range, things like that, before we finish this one, and then we can make the frame and move on to the next one. And I'm hoping to make all my frames for my pieces, but it does take a lot of time, so we'll see. Using a darker colour now to try and create some variegation in the grass, the supposed grass. It's not a good green that for grass, I don't think, but I'm just getting the base colours down, so my hope is to get the texture and then improve later. So I suppose I'm just making a note to myself, this is supposed to be darker green, this is supposed to be lighter green, and then you get my colour matching a bit better later on. Smoothing it in and then striking with a knitting needle. But yeah, the frames, it's a complicated business making frames, and anyone who does any woodwork will know that creating perfect corners, which is very important for framing, is a difficult business, and starting from scratch with unplaned wood takes a long time. And then I spray painted my last frame, and it just looks nice, but the problem is the cost involved in doing that. You need your primer and then the paint itself, and then a clear coat on top. And if you want to sell paintings and try and make a living from it, you're losing quite a lot of potential profit that the buyer probably wouldn't see any value in just spraying your frames. So what I'd like to be able to do is to actually use wood stain on it, and then you'd get to see some of the texture of the wood underneath as well, which would be nice. But for that, you need perfect finish on your wood, and that's pretty difficult to get. But I think I will attempt it, and I'm going to jig the process as well and work on paintings this size repeatedly, and so that I can make frames that are the same repeatedly, and I can jig the process, basically making reference pieces that I can cut quickly without measuring over and over. And if I can dial that in and get it right, then maybe I can do perfect cuts and get perfect wood with no chips or anything on, and then we can just stain the wood. But even gluing and glue marks can lead to problems there. So if you're painting, you can always use a bit of wood filler for any imperfections, but that's not really an option if you want to bring out the wood itself, which I would like to do. So I'll work on that some more, and if anybody was ever interested, maybe as the channel develops, I can show some of my handiwork in the garage with wood and my tools, which is probably where I feel the most at home, when I'm out in the garage working with my tools. And I tend to get a relaxation with that I don't get necessarily when painting. With painting, there's a lot of decisions to make instantly, one after the other, repeatedly, and you're obviously making decisions as you're making something from wood, whatever it may be, or from any other material, but those decisions don't follow necessarily as quickly as the individual strikes and movements of painting. And obviously with painting it does seem to become more automatic and like you're not thinking about it, but I think there is an intensity or a mode that you enter when you're painting that doesn't sort of allow you to necessarily relax in a fully conventional sense. It is relaxing because you're in a sort of meditative or flow state, but when I'm in the garage I just feel pretty calm, unless of course something goes wrong. I had it that one of my shelves collapsed when I was in there, and all the wood fell on the floor and knocked all sorts of tools over and everything. That was pretty stressful. So that kind of thing can challenge you in the garage, but generally speaking, I'm happy when I'm in there. So, as I'm looking at the painting, I'm getting another colour in there now, trying to mix it up, and at this point I'm probably thinking I'm not very happy with it. It's kind of just too arbitrary, but I just keep going and hope that we can find something out of it at the end. And by this point I've invested quite a lot into this piece, so to completely destroy it and start again would not be something I'd really want to do. So I've given up, I suppose is the right word, on the foreground and letting it dry, and then I work on it later. And then I've moved on now to, I did like that greeny blue on the water, but I decided to try and match it all up and unify the water theme a bit more. So I'm going on with some darker blue paint on this. Some primary cyan and ultramarine type mix, I think, if I remember rightly. And I'm just throwing it on really and getting it everywhere, because I put a little bit of a wave froth on the front of that water in a moment, I think, and it didn't need to be too precise. I think as I look at it, some of the green is coming through, the greeny blue, and that does unify the painting a little bit more. If that's what I wanted to do, I suppose it is, because I did it. The green is a nice contrast. And this painting really started off as horizontal lines. So I suppose I'm trying to keep that theme in mind as I do it, as I continue. And fundamentally, as long as there's bands of colour horizontally across the piece, then that's kind of the point of the painting in a way. So if you happen to be watching, please do let me know what you think to all of this, to my work, and tell me a bit about yourselves and what you do and how you got here and why this interests you. I'd be very interested to hear about what you guys might be doing in regards to life and craft and art. And it'd be very nice if we could get a small community of people on here, like-minded, discussing their daily lives and how art and creating fits into that for you. Because I really think I have to have a creative aspect in my life. I have to do, many people have got jobs that they do, and they don't necessarily love the job. They might respect their job, but it can be so difficult to enjoy and love that kind of work, and sometimes you feel like you need something a little bit more on top, and that's kind of what my creativity is about. It's just about being me, I suppose. I'm saying a lot tonight. I think I'm from Northern England originally, and I live in the south now in Oxford. And you'd say a lot in the north. It reminds me of Fred Dibner. And if you know who Fred Dibner is, you'll know he's an entertaining character. And if you don't, you should look him up. There's videos of him on YouTube. I'll not say any more about him, because if you don't know and you want to look, you'll be pretty impressed by his work, what he did for a living. Certainly a brave man. So I've gone back to the grass here in one last attempt to save it, and then I really do feel like I failed. And as you can see, I've got blue paint everywhere on the beach there, but I put some beach froth, some sea froth, the foam of the water. I try and represent that a bit with some very light blue paint in a bit. You see, I've given up so much now. I'm trying to wipe off, and actually it worked out quite well, because then it creates this sort of, when you get the seaweed and stuff on the top of the beach that's not being washed away by the sea, that you only get a really, sorry, I'm yawning, a really high tide. It's late at night here, and I'm tired, as always. But I insist on trying to fit these videos in. So they're gonna be yawny, coffee, rambly videos. And that's what they'll be. But they'll be honest. And they'll be about my painting, at least on the screen, while I talk about all sorts of things over the top. But it's those all sorts that contribute to what I'm putting down there in one way or another. And I wasn't liking this painting for a long time, and actually now, interestingly, now I've come back from travelling over in Germany, and I've come back and seen it again. I do actually like it. I'm quite pleased with it. There's a technical issue or two in that the modelling paste seems to crack up quite a bit, and if anyone happened to know if I'm using it wrong, or if there's a way to stop that, I suppose just being more reserved with it and putting less on and working over time would be better. So one aspect is I want to go in and just sort of fill the cracks. Now I can either do that with my full-bodied acrylic paint, or I could go back over with some modelling paste and just fill in all the little cracks and paint over. Or maybe a bit of both, but I'm definitely gonna, it could be a cool look. I think I've seen it before, the cracked impasto look. It is kind of cool, but I don't really want that for this. So here I am putting my wave foam. I'm going to stick to wave foam as the generic term for whatever this is here. So I'm popping that down. And I think I've just gone for plain white there, and then I add a bit of blue in. I can't remember if there is a bit of blue. Oh no, I think there is a bit of blue. It's hard to tell because I'm in my editing suite and on the computer, and it's just quite a small screen so that it can play back and I can record the sound in basically real time as I'm watching it. So I'm just laying it down again with a knitting needle, and the knitting needle seems to have become a major tool for my painting. I do like it. More precision than the palette knife, and a different effect as well. Not necessarily more precision, actually. The palette knife can be extraordinarily precise. I take it back. And if you see some of the palette knife paintings that have been done, and you look on social media, then it really can be so impressively, precisely put down. But yeah, I'm using the knitting needle here. I don't know how many other people are painting with a knitting needle. Maybe there's someone out there. I'd like to find them. And you know, it'd be cheating if you started painting with a knitting needle and I said, hey, I paint with a knitting needle. I want to know if there's anybody serendipitously painting with a knitting needle, not knowing that me and them are there putting paint down with a knitting needle. So now I've got it all down there, and I think now I'm trying to create the appropriate texture. There we go. A wave foam sort of textural look. There isn't all a very icing a cake look to this as well, I think. There's just like an almost edible looking nature to it. I suppose only in the way that you know, you can eat icing from a cake. It doesn't look like any, let's call it natural food. It looks very artificial, but it does look kind of edible. And there we go. And I think the next session of this that I show will just be brushwork. Like I say, I attacked the foreground with a Stanley knife. The next morning, over breakfast, I made a TikTok and a YouTube short out of it. Got my content made. And I wonder how painters of past would have coped with having to make content. I don't think there's, I mean, part of me wants to make the content, don't get me wrong, but I think there's almost a necessity or a requirement to make it as well now. If you want to be seen. There's no salon. Well, maybe there is a sort of salon. Maybe if you're in the art scene, there is the equivalent of the Paris salon. But I don't want to be in it. Unfortunately. I don't want to really be in the art scene. Just want to paint and communicate digitally with people who might be interested, and maybe sell my work. You know, if people appreciate my work and want to buy it, that would be good enough. I'm not sure I feel the need to be drinking alcoholic beverages in evenings in foyer-like galleries of the high street. I mean, in some ways that seems appealing, but I'm not sure it's for me right now. Anyway, we're approaching the end of this video now, and please come and watch again the next one if you're interested. Like I say, should be getting towards the end of this piece pretty soon, but let's see, you never know. So once again, this is Robert, Deadartstudios. I hope you're having a fine evening, and take care. Bye-bye.